All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Hubdoc Pro Tips webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about how to use Hubdoc to collect clean client data and provide better financial advice. All right. So as you can see, I am not Jeffrey. Unfortunately, Jeffrey was going to dial in remotely, but due to some unforeseen connectivity issues, he's unable to join us today. But I'm super happy to be here. My name is Victoria. I'm the Senior Content Marketing Manager at Hubdoc. And I'm super excited to be joined today by two very special guests. So we have Kelvin Gieck and Twyla Verhelst. They are the co-founders of 2080, which is a cloud accounting firm based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And they're also the co-founders of Helm, which is a new cash flow forecasting app. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the webinar. But Kelvin and Twyla, how are you guys doing today?
Great.
We're great, thanks.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I'm really excited to hear your insights today. But before we dive into the conversation, just a few housekeeping items. So first and foremost, we will send the recording, so keep an eye on your email inbox for that. We'll try and get it out to you by the end of the week. Second, I encourage everyone to ask questions in the GoToWebinar control panel. So we will do a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, and it's a great opportunity to pick Kelvin and Twyla's brains and ask them all kinds of questions about the content we're going to be chatting about today. So yeah, feel free to put those in the GoToWebinar control panel chat. We also have Paige on our end. She's our Hubdoc education content specialist. So she's going to be helping to manage the chat, and she'll respond to any webinar-specific inquiries you might have. And last but not least, we are live today. So to enhance your webinar experience, please close any unnecessary windows and applications. It'll just help to make sure that sound quality is good and you can see us and hear us okay. All right, so let's dive in. So today for the webinar, we're going to be talking about a few kind of specific things that we're going to be getting Kelvin and Twyla's insights on. So first and foremost, how to use Hubdoc's automated connections and upload tools to collect accurate data from your clients. We're also going to get their insight into how to onboard staff and clients for better data verification and coding of source documents in Hubdoc. And last but not least, how a clean data set in your cloud accounting software enables real-time, high integrity, and I guess high quality business advice. Cool. But before we dive into all that, Kelvin and Twyla, let's catch up a little bit. So, you know, as I mentioned, you guys are the co-founders of 2080, which is a cloud accounting firm. You're the co-founders of Helm. You're also Hubdoc Top 50 Cloud Accountants. You're Zero Silver Partners. You know, I'd love to know a little bit more about your journey from starting an accounting firm to starting Helm. So, Kelvin, let's start with you. What led you to start a cloud accounting firm?
Do you want the short answer or the long answer?
Whatever you feel like today.
The short answer is I needed a job. The long answer would be being in Calgary, worked for a lot of oil and gas firms. And so what usually comes along with that in oil and gas firms is they grow their asset base, they sell to the next bigger fish, and that's just how they operate. So over time, your companies continuously sell. And so because of that, the management team that I was fortunate enough to work with, they were very successful, but because of that, they were very good at what they did, and they ultimately got to a point where they wanted to retire. And so I didn't have the technical expertise to continue on the oil and gas side of things. So I actually needed to decide, should I be an employee or start something on my own? The reality is, as Twyla can probably vouch for this, is I would be a terrible employee. And so I decided to start my own business. And so with this management team, they always had a lot of side businesses on the go, which was really neat for me because I got to connect with a lot of very small business, solopreneurs, mom and pop shops, really genuine, great people that had a lot of really hard issues with the finance side of things. They had great ideas, great concepts, but they could never really muster up the accounting and financial side, which is why they reached out to this management team. And so when I kind of said, well, I need to start my own job or start my own business, and I looked at that and how neat that might be and how I could actually impact other people, you know, pretty greatly, it was kind of a no-brainer. And so that's how 2080 started. And then fortunately, at the very kind of outset of it, probably within the first 6 months to 8 months, I had the fortune of meeting Twyla, and she, luckily for me, joined on board, and we were able to grow the company from there. And so that's how 2080 started.
Awesome, and that's such a great story. And I think, you know, helping small businesses succeed is something that a lot of people on the webinar today can really relate to. So yeah, let's get a bit more info about 2080. So, you know, what is your approach to helping businesses with their accounting, and what services do you offer?
Yeah, for sure. In terms of how we approach our client base, again, going back to, how we, and I viewed helping out people, that's really our approach. Our approach is to really make it as quick and seamless and easy for people as we can. We genuinely just want to help our clients. And, everybody has that same ambition for sure. So, we're no different. But what that's molded into for us is, we kind of call it the Uberization of accounting. And, for us, that means something that's, simple, easy, quick, seamless, and very customer focused. Some people can kind of take the Uberization as a negative. We actually look at it as a positive. It's a value add. There's technology out there that can make things better and easier. And, we fully embrace that. And so that's really our approach to the client. We really want to make it as simple as take a picture of a receipt on your phone and everything flows from there. That being said, that doesn't mean that we don't ever talk to our clients. We actually do the exact opposite. What we try to do is leverage technology as much as we can so that we can actually talk to our clients more. And that builds these great relationships. We get really involved with our businesses, clients, and we essentially try to become partners with them. And so that's our approach. In terms of the services that we offer, that plays into, we're end to end. So we do the full gamut of bookkeeping, accounting, tax returns, and it runs that whole range. But where we really focus on is on the part-time controller and part-time CFO services, and that goes back to that relationship again. We really love connecting with the clients, melding that relationship in there, becoming partners with them, and essentially becoming their business coach or financial advisor moving forward, their sounding board, so to speak.
Awesome, that's great. And yeah, I know we're going to get a little bit more into the workflow and how you actually go about kind of offering these services and the workflows you have in place to really take on that partnership role. So I'm excited to chat some more about that. But before we get into that, Twyla, can you provide some insight into what inspired you to launch Helm?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as Kelvin said, we've really always lived in that space of that outsourced CFO and controller and advisory type services. And as a result, we offer cash flow forecasting as one of the services to most of our clients. We tend to work with clients who are small businesses, they're growing, they really need the optics around what can I pay and when, and do I have enough money to do that, especially when it comes timing for rent or payroll. So we had started doing cash flow forecasting for our clients using Excel. We used Excel to basically just outlay whether or not they had the funds to pay this vendor and that vendor and also cover the payroll and the rent. But as you know, with Excel, I mean, it is error prone. It works. It certainly works. We used it for 4.5 years. But it's not something that's really easily scalable, and it's time consuming. So in order for us to offer that service for all of our clients, we wanted to create something that was easy to use, very interactive, but still robust enough to provide the insight as to what they can pay and when.
Awesome, that's great. And yeah, I mean, coming back to sort of the topic of the webinar and collecting data, you mentioned Excel super error prone. So today what we're going to be focusing a lot is, how do you get that clean, error-free data? But yeah, I mean, as both practitioners and entrepreneurs of a cash flow forecasting app, I can't think of two better people to ask this question to, but can you explain exactly, what is clean data? And perhaps more importantly, why is it critical for making business decisions?
Yeah, for sure. For us, clean data is kind of three things. It should be accurate, consistent, and timely. Timely maybe doesn't necessarily relate to clean data per se directly, but it really does become involved because, you can very quickly try to do stuff, but then you might not actually get accurate and consistent data. And so there is an interplay there. For us, accurate data would be, being able to verify our data in the accounting system based off of invoices. There's a lot of stuff that's on actual documentation that you can't necessarily get through other information sources, direct cash coding. And so, not to say that it's bad, that's just not our model. And so one example there would be timing, timing differences. So you've got work date versus invoice date versus payment date. Those are three different timing concepts and can have very profound effects on your financial information. And so in terms of why is accurate data critical, it's so from an advisory perspective, you can actually give proper accrued accounting information and advice based off of that to your end client. And so consistent data is also pretty key. Seems a little similar to accuracy, but it's actually not. We're talking about consistency in actual coding. So you could actually accurately code something, but maybe not consistently code it over time. And so those are two really different concepts in our opinion. And the consistency is really important because, you know, rent expense as an example should always go to rent expense. If it goes somewhere else, that's going to become a problem. So one example that we've seen is, say, owner's draws. You know, somebody will code it to salary, somebody might code it to management fees, somebody might code it to the balance sheet. And so again, that can all be accurate in the sense of at that single point in time it was entered accurately. But over time, that's not consistent. And all three of those accounts have very different meanings on a financial statement, which then when you're trying to look at trends and analysis, it becomes really hard. And so really trying to nail down the consistency of coding becomes really important too. And so for us, again, clean data is accurate, consistent, and timely, which really, if you want to sum it all up, it's essentially garbage in, garbage out. You know, if you put garbage into your system, you're going to get exactly that coming out of it, which when you're trying to offer advisory services, it's really tough to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, thanks. That was a great overview of you know, what exactly clean data is. And I think when it comes down to it as well, I think something that, you know, being on the app partner side of things, if you're providing out of date data, it makes it really hard to provide those proactive advisory services. You know, what should the practice be, or what should the client rather be doing to, you know, look ahead in their business?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, awesome. So let's get a little more technical, and you know, talk a little more about how we actually gather this clean data. So, Twyla, can you provide some insight into which accounting apps that you use at 2080?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of data collection, we predominantly use Hubdoc. We have explored other applications, but we've just found that within our firm, if we don't have consistency in the tool set, we're just not as efficient. And we're all about efficiency in order to get the information in there in that timely and consistent manner that Kelvin mentioned. And so in order for us to have that consistent data and that consistent tool set, we use Hubdoc for all of our clients now. And that's kind of been our go-to from the beginning, from the time that we've really embraced using the technology. And it's a great tool for us to be able to teach our clients how to use it and get the data into the system really quickly and easily.
Got it. That's awesome. And thanks for your kind words about Hubdoc. What other tools are in your standardized tech stack, and do you have a standard tech stack, and why is that important for collecting clean data? Kelvin, I'll throw that to you.
Yeah, for sure. We use a lot of different technology within our firm. You know, we use Asana, G Suite, Slack from a practice standpoint. You know, at any given point in time, our employees could be using anywhere from 5 to 15 apps. But in terms of what we use specifically for accounting process, it would be Hubdoc, Xero, and then Helm, and then we've got Pluto and Fathom. And we use that across the board. You know, so to speak to your question about standardization, it's super important to us, and that's simply from an efficiency and training standpoint. You know, we're all about playing into how can we best offer services to our clients in the best possible way, and standardizing the tech stack does that. You know, we can train once and become really good experts on that system. We'll know all the ins and outs. We'll know how to use it quickly and efficiently, and that all plays into the end customer experience, in our opinion.
Got it. And how does standardization play into getting clean, accurate, consistent data?
Well, again, kind of going back to the question that you just asked, you know, becoming more efficient and experts in all of our apps. You know, human error, going back to the Excel spreadsheets, that's exactly what happens when you've got disparate systems. You know, if you use 2 or 3 different apps potentially to do the same thing, it's not that you can't do that, it's that maybe you're not fully an expert in any one of those systems. And that can lead to, you know, if there's a feature change, maybe you don't know about it, or maybe you're just using it wrong. There's a whole multitude of different reasons that would kind of impact that and how a standardized tech stack would affect clean data. So again, if you can become an expert super proficient in, a range of apps, it will lead to better consistency, better accuracy, all of that, timeliness, everything that we talked about previously.
Got it. That's awesome. And yeah, so speaking a little more specifically about Hubdoc, I'd love to know, how do you use Hubdoc? So yeah, how do you use Hubdoc to actually collect that clean data from your clients? Twyla, I'll throw that to you.
Upon initial onboarding of a client, we teach them how to use Hubdoc. Really, in our entire process, I mean, Kelvin's mentioned that we do the full gamut of from bookkeeping all the way up to outsourced or part-time controllers and CFOs. The portion of that the client needs to do is get their data into the system. And so we teach them how to use Hubdoc. We, show them how to use the app. We ensure they know how to forward any emails that come from their vendors that have a bill or receipt attached to it. And then we also get them to set up the fetch and use the fetch as much as possible so that we get that data from them really in a way that's really easy for them, and that we get it quickly and timely as well.
Got it. And I remember in an earlier conversation that we had, you mentioned, you can use Hubdoc in a bunch of different ways, but you mentioned the importance of using Hubdoc in one standardized way to make sure that you're getting those documents consistently every time. Can you speak a little bit more towards your process for that?
Yeah, I mean, our process in terms of the client side is really just get the information in there and that's it. Don't touch it beyond that. Even within our own team and our own staff, we found that there's still different ways that you can use Hubdoc, and some ways are more efficient than others. I mean, we always make sure that our staff is trained to enable the save configuration feature and the auto sync function so that as soon as that receipt is received once, so that bill has been received once, so the next time it just goes. And we also use Drive. We forward the documents and the source documents over to Drive to have another location for that to be stored. So we make sure that all of that configuration is set up each time so that Hubdoc is really efficient. We want Hubdoc to do as much of the heavy lifting as possible. Let's use the system to its full capabilities. And even with our own staff, it's kind of a reminding and a retraining to make sure that we're using those little things within Hubdoc that make Hubdoc even more efficient than if we were not doing those pieces. So that was a learning experience even for Kelvin and I, is that with the training of our own staff, you can use Hubdoc slightly differently, and it can mean that you have a less efficient or more efficient system that you're working with.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I mean, at its core, Hubdoc is a great tool for collecting source documents. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more towards about how the role of source documents in being, a source of data, and why source documents are so important to the bookkeeping process and eventually, the advisory process. Why go through the trouble of collecting source documents in the first place?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's always been important to us even before we started using Hubdoc to try to get as much of the source documentation as possible. But, if any of the listeners have used a data collection tool before, you know that it has a couple of different advantages. One is obviously that it will do some of the automation and create the entries and reduce your manual data entry. But the other is just to have that source documentation at your fingertips. So whether you're reviewing it in the future internally to make sure that it's coded properly, they haven't missed some assets, or you've got some assets sitting on the profit and loss statement, or if you want it for future for any sort of audit purposes, whether that's an internal audit or an external audit, it's really just nice to have that source documentation at your fingertips. And before we used Hubdoc, we kept that source documentation. It was just separate from the accounting system. So now to have it come over, it creates the entry and it ties the source documentation right to the entry. It's pretty slick, and it's really a way to have that just accessible for future use.
Yeah, that is super important for a lot of reasons. Now, you both alluded to data control being a really, really important part of ensuring that you have the confidence that your data is error-free and that it's accurate. So, Kelvin, I'm wondering if you can go a little bit more into how you manage who actually has access to the data throughout the entire data collection process.
Yeah, for sure. I always like this question because we kind of take a different approach. We get a little heavy-handed, maybe, I guess, with our clients. We don't let them touch it. And a lot of them are very thankful for that. So essentially what we do is the client sends their information through Hubdoc, and after that point in time, they're literally not allowed to touch the data. And so that becomes, we literally own the process. And so that becomes really important because we know exactly who touched the data, when they touched the data, how they touched it. You know, human error happens, so can we improve it? What can we do to kind of roll through that process and help out? And so really it becomes, by owning the process, it becomes more of an internal function. So there's very little external sources that can affect our process. And so then we rely heavily on, say, password management software, as well as apps that have a lot of role management. And then we can internally delegate all of those, you know, roles throughout our organization. And so clients can still view the data, they can still go in and see stuff. But it's just more a case of we literally try to own the process, don't let the client touch it. You know, that's our expertise. And to be quite honest, that's why people come to us, is because they want to offload all of that on us. So they're very accepting of us being a little heavy-handed, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point earlier, you know, in truly being that business partner, it makes sense that, you know, it would be your process and you can learn to work within it.
That's right.
That's awesome. That's great. Now, what are some of the challenges that you might face in getting data from your clients, and how do you overcome them? Twyla, I'll pass that to you.
Yeah, thanks. You know, Kelvin mentioned that we've been heavy-handed, and we weren't always heavy-handed. It was a bit of a learning experience to really get to the point where we felt comfortable saying to our clients, you're going to do this piece, which is get your source documentation into Hubdoc, and we'll do the rest. So it's been a bit of a work in progress to get to the point of really figuring out what can we have them do and what can't we have them do. And now we've settled on them just doing that one piece, and it will, don't touch it after that. Basically, you can view it, but don't touch it. You know, it's, Kelvin talked about Uberizing that process, and that's kind of what we want it to be, is that really they get their documentation in, and that then we have them buy into the results being the advisory. That's really what they've hired us for, is to be that partner, to offer them real-time valuable advice that they couldn't get from their previous source or their previous accountant or bookkeeper, that they've really engaged with us for that piece. So it's kind of the trade-off. It's like we want you to get the documents in order for us to provide you with the advice, you have to get them in. You know, that buy-in has taken some time as well. We've tweaked things here internally, and the times that we didn't have buy-in were the times that honestly we were priced too low. We had a client in particular that comes to mind, that he had 4 different businesses, 4 different fitness franchises, and we priced ourselves at a point where he wasn't paying anything more for our services than he had paid in the past. And he wasn't super motivated to get his documentation in, because from a value standpoint, he was thinking, well, dollar for dollar, it's the same. And my previous bookkeeper, my previous accountant didn't necessarily demand the paperwork that now we are demanding. And so that was a learning experience for us, is that if you're not priced high enough, then they're not looking to you for that value and that advisory service, and as predominantly, so they're not as motivated. So the incentive is to price yourself properly. They want the value add, so they have to do their piece of the puzzle, which is getting the documentation in.
Got it. That's awesome. And yeah, it sounds like you guys have had a kind of a ton of learning experiences that have ultimately enabled you to come up with your workflow for ensuring that your workflow that ensures that you get that clean client data in. So I want to dig into that a little bit more, and a little bit more into Twyla, what you were just saying about, you know, actually getting that client buy-in into these processes. So yeah, so I'm curious, you know, how do you onboard clients and ensure that they're able to get that financial data to you, and how do you get that buy-in?
Yeah, again, you know, the buy-in is mostly related to the end value that people get out of it. And so that's usually a dialogue up front with the client, you know, saying, what are you coming to us for? What do you want? And typically we have a lot of clients that are looking for future looking information. So, you know, budgets, forecasts, where's my cash going to be at, that kind of stuff. And so framing it literally as, well, to get that, you need to do this. And then, as Twyla said, pricing it properly. That's really how we get the client buy-in. In terms of our onboarding process, it's really very straightforward. We've got a typical engagement letter. It literally says in the contract that you do need to buy into the process, and if you don't, then we can part ways. We've never had to do that, but we can, and we do have upfront conversations with our clients about that. And then literally after that, it's training our clients as best as we possibly can. It's not perfect, but spending a lot of time with them on training them on how to use the Hubdoc. Phone app is a really key one I find for my clients, as well as the fetches and the email, the custom emails that you can do within Hubdoc. Training them on those three functions and utilizing those heavily. That's it, because again, our service offering is very much, just get it in the system and you're done. Trying to make it literally as easy as possible. And everybody's got their phones and they can always take a picture and they can always send an email. So it actually is quite easy.
Awesome. And I know you guys provided this awesome overview of your workflow. So I'm wondering if you could walk us through what we're seeing here and give us a little insight into how you came up with this process.
Yeah, for sure. This process evolved over time and probably always will continue to evolve. Starting at the top, that's essentially what we were just talking about, which is really getting the client set up and trained on the three main avenues of getting data into Hubdoc. And at that point in time, it's really just ongoing iterative processes at that point. The client continually has to take pictures of the receipts or forward invoices or bills or, set up their utility company on the fetch. All of that information then feeds into our system internally, and we do our system or our processes, I should say, on a weekly and daily basis. We're hoping to move more daily than weekly just because we feel there's a huge value add there, and it actually is easier on some levels. So in terms of the client, they push all this information into Hubdoc, and then really it's up to us to start processing it from that standpoint. Again, we own the process. It's ours. It's up to us. We handle it. Interestingly enough, like Hubdoc is an integral piece in this process, but we literally try to spend as little time as possible in Hubdoc. It sounds a little counterintuitive, but the reason that I say that is if we've always found, again, going back to Twyla saying, even internally, we've had employees use Hubdoc in very, very different ways than we ever would have expected. And we find that the efficiencies actually turn quite to be the opposite, where they're actually huge inefficiencies. And so we really train our people and really focus on the process to set up the automations. Like AutoSync is our best friend. Integrations with Zapier, we use a lot of those and we use them via email. Love those. And so the more that we can utilize and leverage the systems and the processes, the better off we are. So really, in terms of our weekly and daily workflow, people literally go into the system and they essentially check to see that Hubdoc's working. That really should be it. 6 to 8 times out of 10, that's all that our employees are doing. We really focus on exceptions. And so then it would be the 2 to 4 times, that something's changed or something's new. So what do you do in that case? Well, if it's something new or unrecognized, then simply go into Hubdoc and train the system so that it can remember it moving forward, or merge it, or whatever that looks like. And so again, once you're done that, get out of Hubdoc and go into, in our case, Xero. We use Xero quite a bit. And so really, we want to stay in Hubdoc only in the sense of training the automations. We never code anything in Hubdoc outside of that initial setup. And the reason that we do that is we have seen people, employees in our case, trying to code in Hubdoc on an individual time basis, and it just leads to nothing but chaos and loss of time, in my opinion. And so literally we're getting Hubdoc to just spit information out as consistently again and accurately as possible. And then those 2 to 4 times that we need to change something, we literally do those in the draft invoices in Xero. It's very quick, it's very easy. You log in and you change the account and it's done. It's super quick. You can then verify it against the source documentation, check the GST, check the date, check PST, whatever you need to do. And then you go from there. And kind of once you've hit into the accounting system, then you start getting into, the bank recs and all of that, fun stuff. And so once you've completed your bank recs, you've got all your information, it's all approved, we essentially can start generating AR and AP reports. And in our case, that's a weekly workflow. We talk to our clients minimum once a week just with our reports. And so going back to the whole clean data concept, that's where we catch a lot of the duplicates. So, Hubdoc, if people are sending in invoices as they should be, there's very few times that we've seen a duplicate come through. It does happen, but it's very few times, because if people get in the habit, they just send it and it's done. So there's no going back and, oh, did I send that? Oh, I'll just send it again. It reduces that. If we've got Hubdoc set up properly, you can often catch stuff in there. And if you don't, then it's in zero as a draft, and we can catch it in there. If you don't catch it in the draft section, it will show up on your AR and your AP listing. You're going to see 2 Home Depot receipts, for the exact same amount on the exact same day. And so at that point in time, you could go back, verify your data, check it, change it, whatever you need to do. So essentially, that's the whole workflow on a weekly basis. Then we go through, create these AR and AP reports for our clients, and essentially we then reach out and ask for any missing receipts that we don't have at that point in time. And so that, getting into that routine, it's been really beneficial in terms of getting real-time information, because at any given point in time, we're often not more than, I would say, you could probably go upwards of 2 weeks, but in my experience, it's probably more like 5 to 7 days. Because once your clients get into the habit of actually doing this routine, they don't really miss that much. And if they do miss items, it's usually the smaller items that probably don't mean as much for real-time financial analysis. And so getting into that habit is super key. And so as soon as we send out that missing document report, we get feedback on what that looks like. It gives us an opportunity to dialogue with the clients and see what's going on with their business, see what they're doing, which then leads to, other conversations. In our case, predominantly cash flow, forecasting conversations, budgets, forecasts. What are you doing? Are you buying a new truck, selling a new product or service? It just really strengthens that relationship. So, it's not on this workflow per se, but that one piece about the weekly dialogue with clients is actually super key from the advisory standpoint, because it literally is all about building the relationship. And again, partnering with your client. If you're a true financial partner to your client, you probably should talk to them. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that was a super great comprehensive overview, and I want to get into the advisory in just a minute, but you mentioned a lot about making sure staff are trained on exception management and making sure that they're also super tuned into this process. So Twyla, could you maybe provide a bit more insight into how you train your staff on this process?
Oh, in terms of how we train our staff, this really is what we share with them. Our staff are very procedurally driven, and because of that daily, weekly workflow that we have, this becomes the piece that they can follow. And so, as Kelvin mentioned earlier, we use Asana. We use it day in and day out, and so every task in Asana is a repeating task. And this workflow looks so similar across all of our clients that it becomes kind of back of hand. What do I need to do today? Sit down and go through the workflow, look for really the anomalies and the things that are different and the things that could be potentially conversation points for us to have with our clients. A lot of it just flows through this workflow and the reports are done, but there's a lot of opportunities in there to say, okay, why is this different? Why is there all of a sudden a big purchase, or why are they missing this or that? And it can be kind of a trigger spot to say, okay, there's something we need to dive in here and something that we need to dialogue with the client about.
Awesome, that's great. I'm happy to hear you use Asana. I personally am a huge fan, so it's a great tool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So yeah, coming back to clean data and moving into advisory. So, what processes do you have in place to make sure that the transfer of data between systems is smooth and that, the integrity of the information remains high? Kelvin, I'll pass that to you.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it kind of goes back to this workflow that we're looking at right now, in terms of keeping the integrity of the data within the system. It really goes back to all of the kind of mini workflows and sub workflows within the overall process. As long as the client is doing their job and just simply inputting data, they're not going in and manipulating stuff or adding invoices that you didn't know about or doing this or doing that. That's one step to getting nice, clean, controlled data. In terms of our employees, which Twyla was just talking about, getting them, all standardized, experts in the systems and processes, using Asana quite a bit, going through all of the step procedures. If you do that, it just leads to cleaner data within the overall process. And so doing that and then combining it with the weekly dialogue around our clients, there's just simply like 4 or 5 really blocks and firewalls and reviews and procedures within the overall process that all generally lead to the integrity of the overall system. And so, we're very much process oriented people. We love Hubdoc, we love Xero, we love a whole bunch of other apps, but we're also very much system agnostic in the sense that, at any given point in time, we'd like to be able to pull out an app if there's a better one out there. And again, the ability to do that only comes from being process orientated. It gives us the ability to kind of choose the best of the best and then integrate it within the overall process to provide the client with the ultimate client experience, clean data, the forecasting and budgeting that can come from that.
Awesome, that's great. And I know earlier on in our conversation you mentioned Zapier. I'm curious about how you use that in your tech stack, and particularly, how you potentially use it between apps. Could you provide a few more details there?
Yeah, for sure. We use Zapier not as much as I would like to be honest. We really want to use Zapier a lot more. We predominantly use it as document storage or a tool to get our document storage. And so what we found in our workings with Hubdoc is that the Google Drive integration doesn't work sometimes, and that's simply because of Drive, not actually Hubdoc. They just change their logins a lot, and it really leads to a lot of issues. And so we simply found it easier to actually email to Zapier and then have Zapier actually email back into the system. There's a whole host of other things that we would really like to kind of touch on with Zapier integrated with, say, Hubdoc and Xero and other avenues, and we're continuously building those out. It's a great area to get into, and there's a lot of avenues that you can take it in order to create efficiencies within your system.
Awesome, that's great. Yeah, thanks for providing that insight. All right, cool. So let's go into, we've collected all this clean data, and it's just ready to be turned into insights. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So I guess, Twyla, I'll throw this to you. How do you start to turn this data into insights for your clients, and how do you really start to introduce that advisory piece into your services?
Yeah, internally, we believe that the clean data is definitely the foundation. In order to be able to provide the advisory services, you have to have the clean data. As Kelvin mentioned kind of at the beginning, we really have always lived in that advisory space before it was even called advisory space. Because Kelvin and I, neither one of us came from a very straightforward accounting, compliance, tax background. We always came from an operational background, and that meant that the advisory piece was just natural to us. That's the part that gets us excited, the opportunity to partner with the clients and really provide them with some insights and some forecasting and some real value add is what excites us. I mean, we have always used a number of different applications once we've got the clean data in there. As Kelvin mentioned, in our tech stack, we have kind of on the back end would be Fathom, we have Explored Futurely, and now of course we're using Helm for our cash flow forecasting tool. We do the weekly communication with our clients, but on top of that, we also have monthly meetings to just kind of see where things are at, looking at forecasts versus actuals, kind of just seeing if we're on target and on point from our last meeting. And then we also do at least quarterly kind of sessions where we're doing more strategy. Where's your company going? Let's talk more about operations. Do you have the right people in place? Do you have the right tools and equipment in place? Are you changing product lines, as Kelvin mentioned? Just kind of that strategy, that real partnership, and the real kind of diving into not where you've come from and where the client's at today, but where they're headed and what their longer term vision is, what their goals are, and how do we work today to get to those goals. So that clean data is really kind of the necessary part of the accounting side versus where we really enjoy spending our time with our clients is not so much in the past, but more in the future, and where's the business going.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And it all comes back to that garbage in, garbage out that we were talking about earlier. So I mean, you mentioned that you've always sort of been in the advisory space. I'm curious, maybe from your conversations with fellow accounting and bookkeeping professionals in the space, how have efficient data collection systems like how would they enable you to potentially expand your service offerings and, help you move into advisory?
Yeah, for us, because we were already in advisory, embracing the tech and using the tech to be more efficient was getting us to a spot where we could be super efficient. I mean, like I even mentioned, we always collected source data. We've never been cache coders. We always wanted to have clean data, but now we can just do it much more efficiently. And at the time that we really adopted Hubdoc in addition to Xero for our accounting platform, that's when we really saw the efficiencies kind of reveal themselves. At that time, we were 10 people in our organization with using Hubdoc and some of the technology fully. We were able to go down to 4 people, and then we actually took on the exercise of going down to just Kelvin and I. And that was an interesting exercise because we maintained our existing client load, and we still kept that client load, still did the advisory services, and really got the opportunity to see what can we do with the technology, how efficient between workflows and tech, how efficient can we really be. So since then, we've built our team back up. We're now 6, almost 7 of us in our team, but we really wanted to see what can we do, how much power can we get from these systems. So that was kind of a really great exercise for us to put under our belts to see what do we need to do. Like, that's in terms of even adopting Asana and helping with the workflow in that respect. That's when those things came to light for us, is that it was only him and I, and we had to still maintain the clients that we have, still offer the advisory services that they were used to, but still needed to get the data in order to give the advisory services. So, it's worked out in a way for us where the technology has just been able to allow us to be more efficient and provide our services to the client at a flat fee that they can afford long term. And so that's important to us. We don't want to necessarily be in our relationship with the client for the short term. We want to be there with them for the long term. And a client can grow to quite a substantial size before they need to have an in-sourced accounting department, because of the technology and because of the opportunity for us to have real-time data, offer real-time advice, even though we're outsourced.
Awesome. That's great. And that's a crazy story that, it was just you guys for a while and you were really putting processes and technology to the test. I mean, I don't want to encourage anyone on the webinar today to have to take those steps. So I'm curious, what were sort of from that exercise, what was maybe like the one key learning that you learned about, or like that you couldn't live without in order to provide advisory services?
That's a good question.
For me, I would say it's the workflow, and that even recently with something, we have consistency as much as possible across our clients' workflow, and it's not always possible because there's always some sort of idiosyncrasy within each client. But even just as recently as the last few weeks, there was something that I did that was outside of workflow, and then quickly it became an inefficient, and in this case, an inaccurate process that we ended up following through on for the client. Nothing that was, alarming and put us into a detrimental spot, but it's still, the times that we fall off the workflow, for me anyways, I'm quickly reminded why we need the workflow and why that's so important. And as we're trying to scale our business and also, do more of the software side with Helm, we're trying to really make our process as scalable and as consistent as possible. We now have our champion here in-house. Her name is Sam, and we're trying to build her up so that she can do more of these advisory services that historically Kelvin and I have done. And if we don't have that foundational workflow underneath her, then she's not going to be able to do that either. And so I would say that's been my biggest takeaway anyways, is how important that is. And Kelvin's better at following workflows than I am. I like kind of sometimes falling off and doing my own thing because I think this is quicker and it makes sense in the moment, but it can kind of bite you in the butt a little bit if you don't follow through. And that's what happened to me a couple of weeks ago. It bit me in the butt, and it was a good solid reminder of, no, we have a team here now of 6 or 7 people. I can't be doing that. It needs to be consistent, and the client expects it to be consistent. We've taught them and sold them on that consistency too, and so it's I'd say the most important piece from my side.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great learning. Very cool. All right, so I'm seeing a number of really awesome questions coming in from the audience, and I'll give the audience a few more minutes to submit those questions in, so we can get to answering those in a minute. But before we do, just wanted to bring everyone through a couple of offers. So we've talked a lot about Hubdoc today. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about Hubdoc and taking your Hubdoc skills to the next level, I wanted to let everyone know that we have free online courses available. So if you head to learn.hubdoc.com, you can take courses that will teach you how to use Hubdoc with Xero, QuickBooks Online, Bill.com, and more. And when you complete them, you'll get a nice completion badge that you can display on your website. But yeah, if you're looking for kind of the go-to guide to learn everything Hubdoc, highly recommend you check out our courses. We've talked a little bit about Helm today, but Kelvin and Twyla, I want to pass it over to you. Could you tell us a little bit more about how the audience can learn more about Helm?
Yeah, for sure. We just officially integrated with Xero about 3 weeks ago, is it now? It's just been a blur.
I think so, 3 weeks ago.
Roughly, something like that. Yeah, we're super excited about it. We found that it really helps us in terms of being able to get a short-term cash flow forecast out quickly, easily, and visually for clients. We've always found that the visual component is super big. So if people wanted to learn more about it, we're kind of in a limited release where we're onboarding people one at a time so we can let them, demo it with them, do a Zoom call, get them really to get to know the product before we do the full-blown, big release. But if people want to check out more, please visit the website shown on the screen, and we'd be happy to set up that call and walk people through it.
Just to add to that, so the Xero integration is complete and the QBO integration is in the works. So if you're a QBO user, still feel free to go to the website and put your interest in there. We can even give you a demo ahead of time before that QBO launch is completed, but the Xero integration is done at this point.
Awesome, that's super exciting, and congratulations to you both on the launch. That's yeah, it's awesome.
Thanks.
Awesome. And last but not least, before we get to questions, if you are brand new to Hubdoc, I just wanted to give a reminder that accounting and bookkeeping practices are eligible for a free Hubdoc partner account. So if you have not signed up yet, you can do so at app.hubdoc.com/sign up and get started. Alrighty, let's move to some audience questions. And I know we have a few minutes to get through these, but if we don't happen to get to your questions, feel free to follow up with us and we'll be more than happy to try and answer your question offline. All right. So first question from Brianna. Oh, this is a great one. How do you enforce clients not touching the data after upload? We're struggling with how to slap those hands after they've uploaded. So yeah, Kelvin or Twyla, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, that's a super interesting question because the reality is sometimes the clients still have access to the data. In Hubdoc, they can still go in and they can change stuff potentially. For us, we find that they don't do that. And so then the only other time, they don't want to touch it because they just don't want to break stuff. But sometimes people will go into Xero and start meddling stuff. So it could happen in QBO too, where they go in and meddle with the account or meddle with the amount or quantity or whatever. And so what we actually do is we only provide our clients with view-only access. There's actually few clients that have admin level access. And so again, we own the process. So it's our subscription. We include it in the fee and we kind of essentially lock our client out. The other thing goes back to is price and just framing it with the client up front is that, the process is you don't touch the data. And we've always found if you have all of these conversations up front and it's part of the initial dialogue and onboarding process, it becomes much easier. We've grown and we've had a lot of pains too, and we've always found that if you're trying to have the conversation after the fact, it's very hard to do. And that all goes back to, people have probably heard it out the wazoo. You gotta, fire your clients, pick your clients, all that fun stuff. And it's true because if you initially have that client's buy-in with what you've framed and what you've talked about up front, things typically work out well. If you try to change stuff after the fact and the client maybe hasn't bought into it, that could simply be a personality difference, and maybe that person just doesn't like doing that, at which point that person actually doesn't fit your process anymore. And so it's a fine balance. Like, we've taken 5 years building up our firm and kind of weeding out the clients and getting through that. One thing that we've kind of talked about actually is penalizing our clients. And so we're actually going to start testing that out in the future. We've talked to a few people that have started doing this where Again, we own the process. It's ours. We're the experts. People love it. Like, I'm not trying to be rude to them or anything like that. They actually like it when we say that because it's a sense of relief for them. One thing we've talked about doing is that if people go outside of the process, which would be not putting their data in or manipulating the data when they're not supposed to, any one of a number of things, we're going to probably establish some sort of percentage increase in their monthly fee. So essentially penalizing them for not being good. And we'll see how it works. We haven't tried it yet, but we'll be rolling that out, I think, probably in the next couple months, and we'll see how it goes. I'm of the opinion that money usually solves most problems, especially if you have to pay more. So.
Awesome. That's super interesting. We'll have to follow up on that because I'd be interested to see how that goes. Seems like an effective system to me.
It could be.
Awesome. All right, another question here. This one is from Rob. Can you describe what an average client looks like that is a great fit for Hubdoc and your system? So for instance, the revenue, number of employees, age of the owners, etc.
We found with our clients that the size doesn't really matter. I mean, unless you've got somebody that's got 1 or 2 transactions a month and it's very, very limited. We use Hubdoc for, we have some pretty small clients up to some quite large clients, and we use Hubdoc for all of them. Part of that's the consistency, like we spoke about, that we want to have the consistency in our workflow. But really, there's no limitation from our experience as to when you should and shouldn't take on Hubdoc as one of the tools that you use in your tech stack. Because for us, it is a case of, unless you've just got those 1 or 2 transactions, it gets the source documentation into your system. It creates the entry for you. You know that that source documentation is there in the event of an audit down the road, and it's consistent. So we do use it for every single client, no matter how small.
And to add to that, I think there's a couple of interesting components there because, in terms of what a client looks like, it can be very different. We've got one client being in energy services. Their revenues dropped in half, but their volume hasn't changed at all. That's just simply pricing in the environment. And so sometimes it's really hard to go based off of employee counts and revenue counts. A prime example is one client that we've had where I can tell you what a bad client on Hubdoc looks like. And that's somebody that goes to totally unique places for almost every single purchase that they have. The process blows up because you're continually having to train the system every single time. And so I can say that a bad client is one that, proportionately speaking, has like 70 to 80% of their transactions are at, a different A&W around town every single day. And it might sound weird, but we've literally had a client like that, and it was super hard to manage within our workflow. Like it blew our system up.
Yeah, understandably so. And that actually leads to this next question that came in from Danielle. How do you determine with your clients which automated connections they should add to their Hubdoc account? Do you have a process for that?
Do you want to take that?
The automated, sorry, what was it?
Connections.
How do you add the auto fetch, the automated connections for each client?
I mean, we use Hubdoc again consistently with all of our clients, and we put everything into everything that can possibly be on AutoFetch. We use AutoFetch for, and so I mean, even on a twice a month kind of basis, we're in there kind of saying, is this one happen to be available now? And we'll even shoot a note to Hubdoc saying, hey, like, get this one on your radar because it's one that we find that we use a lot. So anything and everything that we can use AutoFetch for. I mean, AutoFetch is great. You can turn it on, and then everything that comes through for that vendor flows into Hubdoc, and you don't have to do anything else. And I've found that historically, with those vendors that you can do auto fetch from, you sometimes will get an email. Like we use, an example of that is Shaw. So Shaw will send through an email that says that your bill this month is $200, say, but the actual invoice or the actual bill isn't attached to that. So it eliminates the email that's really not going to be a great source document in the future if you need it, or going in and logging in and pulling that documentation off. So anytime that we can use AutoFetch, the AutoFetch feature, we do.
Yeah, process-wise, it's kind of order of operations is AutoFetch is always first, and if you can't do that, then you resort to probably snapshots on your phone or some kind of email transfer. you know, emailing is really good in the sense that you can set up auto forwarding, and so then that probably would be your second default, and then a more manual operation like a picture on your phone.
Got it. Yeah, and that seems super consistent with how many of the Hubdoc partners I've spoken to go about setting those connections, which is great. All right, question here from Rebecca. Love this question. How do you evaluate which apps to add to your tech stack? What are some of the criteria that you find to be most important?
Yeah, I was just having this discussion with somebody the other day. Customer service for me is priority number one, because you know, we've had experiences with other apps that maybe had the odd feature that was better than another app, but their customer service was terrible. And so then when you hit an issue, it blows up the process again, because we're trying to be super efficient, really process driven. We find that if something, as Twyla alluded to earlier, if something fits outside of the workflow and the process, it can really throw a dent into your timing and how you're working. And so customer service is top priority. You know, if they can help field a question or an issue that we have quickly and efficiently, that only helps us out. Whereas if it's the opposite, it compounds, and especially over time when you're trying to be so efficient and so process driven, it's quite shocking at how issues can compound over time.
Got it. Makes a ton of sense. All right, I think we're just about coming up on time, so one more question. This one is from Bill. What are some of the common client questions that you get when you're initially onboarding them to Hubdoc?
Common client questions.
What is it?
Yeah. Why? I mean, I think it's all pretty basic, right? It's the why, the how, the, you know, things that we cover off in our initial onboarding training. I think, you know, depending on your client, sometimes it can be a case of even asking around about security and should I be using this? And so, you know, because we've been using Hubdoc for a number of years, we feel really comfortable with answering all those questions, and then we've built a lot of that into our onboarding process. Again, from our standpoint there, we've got buy-in. We've got the client, you know, we aren't cheap, and so we've priced ourselves in a way that the client's bought into what they're going to get. So this is just kind of the means of how to get that. And so, you know, the common questions though are really upon the initial setup. And then once they see how easy it is to take pictures with their phone, then usually those questions kind of stop, other than any sort of like new fetch opportunities or new setup opportunities, or if they're, you know, they're adding another employee and they want that employee to be able to send in documentation, you know, how do we do that? But the initial kind of uphill battle of getting somebody onto the new platform, being Hubdoc, is usually pretty straightforward because of the fact that we've got that buy-in really early in the process.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Awesome. Alrighty. Well, Kelvin and Twyla, thank you so much for joining us today. Really, really appreciate you sharing all of your insights. I know I learned a lot, and I hope members from the audience did as well. But seriously, thank you. We really, really appreciate you joining us today.
No problem. It's been fun to be on with you guys. And, you know, if there is any other questions that come through, we're happy to answer them. Kelvin and I are all about sharing from our experiences. And, you know, we learned some lessons the hard way. So if we can, if we can share any of that with anyone, you know, in the accounting community, we're happy to do that. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out if there's something we can help with.
What
awesome.
She said.
That's great. Yeah, we always get better when we learn from each other. And I believe they can find you both on Twitter, right? Is it at Helm_Twyla and Helm_Kelvin? Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
For sure. You can also find me trolling around LinkedIn quite a bit too.
Perfect.
We're both on LinkedIn and both on Facebook as well. So yeah, we're around. We're accessible. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, they can definitely reach out.
Absolutely.
Great. All right. Yes. Well, huge thank you to you both again, and to the audience. Thank you so much for joining us today. If we didn't get to your question, we apologize. Again, feel free to reach out to myself or to Twyla or Kelvin, and we'd be happy to follow up. We will be sending links to all the awesome resources that Paige provided in the webinar chat today in the follow-ups. Keep an eye out on your inbox for that. And just one more ask for everyone. Again, thanks for joining us today, but we'd love to know, we take feedback really seriously here at Hubdoc, and we'd love to know, did the content in this webinar meet your expectations? And if you didn't learn what you wanted to learn, what would you have liked to learn? And yeah, let us know so we can improve for next time. We're always looking to come up with new webinar ideas and share the knowledge that people are wanting to learn. So please don't hesitate to reach out to Paige. Her email's right there at paige@hubdoc.com to let us know. All right, and I think that's it for today. So again, Twyla, Kelvin, thank you. And to everyone who took the time to attend today, huge thank you again. And I hope we all talk soon.
Sure, thanks.
Thanks.
All right, thanks everyone. Bye, have a good day.